around here. Your story goes around in a circle. And your conclusion is here. And it hooks with the lead. And this is the body. Well, obviously, with this kind of a story, you can't cut it at the end, or it's going to imbalance it. So if you have to do any cutting, you cut from inside the story itself, and not from the ending of it. And I think I gave you a handout example of this one that I wrote about the ghost city of Mistraw. The opening paragraph was, "This journey began with a dream. My deceased mother pointing to a spot on the map, saying, 'This is Mistraw, you must go there.' And then I go to talk about what Mistraw is. It's this ghost town near Sparta, and how I get there, and when I go there, what I see, and all these kinds of things, all to do with the journey of going to Mistraw and experiencing this amazing place. And in the very end, later I sit in the courtyard of the monastery, savoring the feeling. Gradually a composition I used to play on my mother's piano comes to mind in a monastery garden. I realized that this setting with its roses, potted plants, flowering shrubs, and burbling fountain is exactly as I used to imagine as a child. Inside the chapel, I sit on one of the little wooden seats along the wall and think of my mother, whose presence I have felt all day, and I thank her for guiding my way." So the beginning hooks with the ending, and that's the most common way of doing your stories. And it really it just brings the whole thing together, and it makes a nice round, a satisfactory kind of conclusion to your story to bring it back around like that. Now, another thing you can do is, if you can't quite remember all the things, or sometimes something happens that it's not really that great for a travel story, but it's an interesting thing that happened. Maybe it's a kind of cautionary tale kind of thing. If you're writing a story like that, you can write it in this creative nonfiction style, so that there's places in it that you can't really remember all the details. You can kind of speculate. Or you can leave out details that may be a little bit not so interesting, and make other incidences in the story a little bit more dramatic to make them more exciting. And that's the creative nonfiction style of writing. I had a couple of samples of things like that. One was this, oh, it's both the same one, I guess. Oh, one was this, I think I gave you a sample. One is this one time when I was going to go up north to watch the fire dancers I think it's the 24th of May in Greece, and they dance on the fire coals, and they never get burned. They do that in some countries, but this is a big thing in Greece, and they dance around with these icons, and it's quite fantastic. And so I was really excited about going up there to see this. I was going to get this big story out of it. So the night before I went, I was out for dinner with a friend and had some shellfish. And I ended up getting a really bad case of food poisoning. So I had got these pills at the pharmacy, and they told me, take them so many times. And okay, then I thought, well, I'll get an extra box of them just in case, because I was going to take the train up north. Well, by the time I got off the train and went to go to find the bus that I had to take to this little town where this stuff was going to happen, I was sitting on a bench, and I suddenly felt like as if I was going to die or something. I was just like, and I even remembered writing down my address in Athens and putting it in my pocket, because and then I thought, well, this is ridiculous, probably because you haven't eaten breakfast yet. So I went and had something to eat, and then I went to the hotel in this town, got to the town, went to the hotel, and I still kept feeling really, really weird. And then I was looking, I thought, well, I better go to the hospital. So I was looking in the mirror, combing my hair, and suddenly I noticed my eyes were dilated, and I thought, it's drugs. And I went to a pharmacy and took the box of pills, and he said, oh, you shouldn't have taken so many of them. They were full of opiates.
Oh
So
my
I got over that. Then I had to try to find where these fire dancers were. So I finally found, and I'd seen some gypsies just on the edge of town, but when I finally found this house where these fire dancers were going to be doing their rituals that they do before they go and dance on the actual fire coals, I went there, and then just when the fire dancers were getting ready to go, to parade off to go to the fairgrounds where they were going to do the fire dancing, suddenly the sky went black, and it just started pouring rain, and everybody had to go running back to the house. And the next day, exactly the same thing happened. So, in fact, there was no fire dancing. I didn't see any. But I wanted to write the story, so I had to make an ending up. So, because this ritual is actually frowned upon by the Orthodox Church, that's why they were doing the fire dancing in the fairgrounds. At the end of the story, I had invented, well, maybe I don't have it on here, but what I did was I invented a priest standing there with his umbrella, looking up at the sky and saying, "Tea Prima, too bad." And there wasn't going to be any fire dancing that weekend. So I made up the whole ending of it in order to make the story come around full circle. And the other one was this one, which I actually submitted to an anthology of cautionary tales for first backpacking travelers to Europe. And this was the one full moon night in Athens, what my mother told me, don't take candy for strangers, when we were all, my friends and I were up on the top of Philippa Hill celebrating the full moon, and this strange guy came along, dressed in biblical clothes, weird, and he had a bottle of ouzo with him that he wanted to share with us, but we'd been drinking wine, but my one friend said, oh, I'll try some, and she took about maybe 2 or 3 sips of it. Long story short, it turned out it was a date rape drug, and he had intended all of us to take it so he could rob us. And we ended up having to take her to the hospital because she was right out of it. And that was another adventure. The whole thing was a huge adventure. This thing, like, nowadays people know about that kind of stuff, but this was a few years back when it wasn't really that well known. So I wrote this story about that, just because for this anthology. But then they said they were going to publish it, and then they said they weren't going to publish it because it would deter people from traveling.
Oh.
Anyway, so those are things that you can do with stories that are not completely fleshed out stories, but you can make up parts of them in a creative nonfiction kind of way. So I remember seeing there's one book out, and it's called Bad Trips. And all it is contributions from a bunch of different travel writers writing about bad trips.
I've noticed when I'm talking to friends about traveling, the only ones who have interesting stories are the ones who have bad experiences, and which I find a bit difficult, because if your trip goes well, you have nothing to write about.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, for the same reason that I don't go to 5-star resorts. I want some adventure. I don't want to be with the people. And I haven't really I've had a couple of dodgy things happen, but I've never really had anything really super bad. But there's always something you can, you know, like this thing with the date rape drug. But I made a whole story out of it, so it's okay. But it was something that you have to be aware of, and so.
But if the trip goes really well, you might have to embellish.
Yeah, well, like the thing with the fire dancers, it was an amazing experience, but nothing happened. So I had to sort of just embellish it and make it more exciting.